Katherine Johnson, a talented student, faced humiliation from an arrogant professor trying to break her. Years of struggle made her a leader, and now she was set to take his place. Katherine Johnson, a 22-year-old black student with a proud stance and bright, intelligent eyes, walked into the large lecture hall of a prestigious university. The room was filled with mostly white students chatting about the upcoming lecture. Katherine felt the weight of their stares as she climbed to her seat in the middle of the hall. She set out her laptop and notebook, ready for her first philosophy class. Waiting at the front was Professor Williams, a man in his 60s, with thick gray hair and a thin line of a mouth that hinted at constant mild disdain. Known for his sharp wit, he was respected by colleagues, but students knew him as someone who never missed a chance to assert his superiority. The first weeks of Katherine's studies were tense. She listened closely, missed no details, and took diligent notes. Yet, she felt his indifference, as if he was purposefully ignoring her. In seminars, he often overlooked her raised hand, favoring students he considered more suitable for complex questions. One day, during a lecture, Katherine found the courage to ask a question without waiting for her turn. Her voice was steady but slightly trembling. "Professor, may I clarify one point?" All eyes turned to her, and time seemed to stop. Williams paused, looked over his glasses, and, with irritation, interrupted. "Ah, another uninvited know-it-all. Do you think you understand this better than I do?" His words hit like a bolt of lightning. Silence filled the room, and Katherine's face turned pale. Her throat tightened and her hands trembled, but she held back, knowing a protest would worsen her position. Professor Williams continued as if nothing happened, but Katherine knew this was a turning point. Some students exchanged mocking looks. Others showed sympathy. Katherine pretended to take notes, but inside, a storm brewed. She understood that her fight for recognition had just begun, and that she needed to prove, both to the professor and to everyone who doubted her, that she belonged there. After the humiliating incident in the lecture hall, Katherine vowed never to give Professor Williams a reason to doubt her abilities. She arrived at the library early and stayed late, dedicating every spare moment to her studies. She delved into core material and beyond, exploring renowned philosophers and rare publications to deepen her understanding. She organized her thoughts in a thick notebook, analyzing controversial topics and noting down ideas that often challenged the professor's views. Katherine became one of the most active students in seminars, asking questions and engaging in discussions despite Williams's condescension. Her knowledge and confidence grew. By the end of the first semester, her grades were among the best, a surprise to many, including the professor. In the next semester, her accomplishments were impossible to ignore. Students sought her advice, meeting in the library to tackle difficult topics together. Her seminar contributions became more confident, handling complex questions with clarity that some peers lacked. This only irritated Williams. He often ignored her raised hand, favoring others, and when forced to acknowledge her, he responded with a stone-faced expression, sometimes smirking. When it came time to recommend students for academic conferences, Katherine asked Professor Williams for a reference, a key step for her future. Williams refused, claiming she was not ready for such events and should focus on basic knowledge. He made it clear that despite her grades, he didn't consider her understanding deep enough. Katherine saw this rejection as another challenge. She knew Williams didn't want to admit her achievements. Her resolve grew stronger, and students, noticing her persistence, rallied around her. They admired her knowledge and strength, often leaving notes of encouragement in the library, small gestures that fueled her determination. Each success increased Williams's irritation. He looked for any mistake, posing tricky questions in hopes she'd stumble. But Katherine answered confidently every time, proving over and over that she deserved her place at the university. Years later, after long nights of studying and relentless effort, Katherine Johnson successfully defended her dissertation. She chose a complex and underexplored topic that touched on modern philosophical problems, sparking lively debates among students and professors alike. Her defense was striking and confident. She easily fielded the most challenging questions, skillfully addressing criticism, and demonstrating a deep understanding of both the theory and practice of philosophy. Even the strictest members of the examination committee acknowledged her brilliant knowledge and capacity for original thinking. Catherine earned her PhD, but it was not just a personal victory. It was a triumph over the many barriers Professor Williams had tried to place in her way. To him, she remained too young and inexperienced, but the university community, tired of his arrogance and prejudice, began to see Catherine as a new leader, capable of bringing fresh ideas to academia. Soon after her defense, the election for the new dean of the philosophy department began. Professor Williams, the presumed favorite, was confident that he would take the position. He had long been the informal leader of the department and commanded respect among his peers, despite his strictness and penchant for harsh criticism. His lectures were popular, but for many students and younger professors, he represented the old conservative order of the university. However, unexpectedly, the university community began discussing Catherine's candidacy. Many young professors who had followed her progress, students who saw her as a model of resilience, and committee members impressed by her dissertation began to support her. Catherine became a symbol of change and renewal, something the university had long lacked. This sparked discussions, debates, and even divisions within the faculty. Some considered her too young and inexperienced for such a crucial role, while others saw in her a fresh voice, capable of revitalizing the department. At the meeting where the election results were to be announced, the tension was palpable. The hall was packed. Many students and professors wanted to hear the decision in person. Professor Williams, seated in the front row, smiled reservedly, confident that the vote would go in his favor. When Catherine's name was announced as the leading candidate, his expression turned cold. He stood up and took the floor. In his usual sharp tone, he spoke about the university's traditions, emphasizing that leading a department requires experience and maturity, clearly alluding to her youth and supposed lack of experience. His words were full of references to her past mistakes and the contentious moments of their academic disagreements. But this time, his voice no longer carried the same weight. Those present, who knew Catherine and witnessed her achievements, did not rally to his side. When Williams finished his speech, the hall fell silent, but only briefly. The moderator announced the election results, and Catherine's name resounded victoriously. The decision was supported by the majority, and her appointment became a surprising and significant event for the university. Professor Williams, unable to hide his disappointment, sat back down, realizing that his voice had gone unheard. Catherine's victory was not just a personal triumph, but symbolized a shift within the university. She became the first Black woman to hold the position of Dean of the Philosophy Department, a milestone that would be talked about in the university's halls and student circles for years. When Catherine was formally announced as the new Dean of the Philosophy Department, applause erupted in the hall, though there was a noticeable silence from those who had supported Professor Williams. Catherine ascended the stage with dignity, her face glowing with a sense of achievement, but her expression remained focused and calm. She understood that this moment was not just about personal success, but also proof that perseverance and knowledge could overcome even the highest barriers. As the gathering came to an end, Professor Williams, his face an emotionless mask, approached Catherine. She could see him struggling to find the right words. Finally, extending his hand, he congratulated her on the appointment. "Congratulations, Dr. Johnson," he said, carefully enunciating each word. "I hope your leadership will benefit the department." His tone was neutral, but his eyes betrayed disappointment and bitterness, as if he couldn't believe the student he once mocked now led the department. Catherine returned his handshake warmly, feeling a mixture of emotions welling up inside her. Now, she would be working with Williams not as a student, but as his superior. It was a test not only for her but for him, to accept the new reality in which she was not just his equal, but his boss. The first thing Catherine did as dean was to announce that she intended to review and update the department's curriculum. Her goal was to make education more inclusive and diverse, incorporating modern philosophical trends and works by underrepresented authors, rarely discussed in academic circles. To the surprise of many, she publicly invited Professor Williams to participate in this process, recognizing that his expertise in traditional philosophy could be valuable for balancing innovation with classic perspectives. This was her way of demonstrating fair and measured leadership. Williams agreed reluctantly, but his eyes said it all. He knew that refusing would look like weakness, but agreeing was no easy task. His ego was wounded, yet he couldn't deny Catherine's professional merits and the authority she had earned through her hard work. In the early meetings on updating the curriculum, he was silent and distant. But gradually, as he engaged with the new ideas, he acknowledged that many of Catherine's proposals were genuinely promising. For Catherine, it was a test of patience and resilience. She saw how some colleagues observed her interactions with Williams, expecting conflicts or disagreements, but she remained composed, showing that her goal was not revenge, but cooperation for the benefit of the students. She started organizing open lectures and discussion clubs, inviting both traditional scholars and young specialists, encouraging everyone to debate pressing issues in philosophy and society. Gradually, her leadership began to show results. Students who previously felt isolated or undervalued became more active in academic life, knowing their voices were now being heard. The department started attracting new students, including minorities who had previously avoided the university due to its reputation. Catherine realized that her success was not just a personal triumph, but a crucial step forward for the entire academic community. Her victory became a symbol of the fight against discrimination and a testament that change is possible when pursued with determination.